Former Mayor of Atlanta, Kasim Reed, joining me now. Mayor, thank you so much for being with us. How's everything been going with you since you left office and during the pandemic here?
Well, it's been amazing. I mean, during the pandemic, as awful as it was, I was able to spend more time with my daughter Maria than we've ever spent together. So that was probably the most special part of it. We'll never be able to get that kind of time back. And then regarding my professional life, it's been pretty amazing. So I feel real good about it, and I'm excited to have a few moments to talk to you about JetDoc, the telehealth company that we've been building based in Atlanta.
Yeah, so talk to me about JetDoc. I know you're working with rapper Rick Ross and Dr. Jackie on it. For those who aren't familiar with JetDoc, what is it and what will it mean, especially for communities of color?
Sure. Well, we started in the state of Florida and then we've expanded to Georgia. And what it does is it's really simple. An app that's available at JetDoc, and it allows you to have a doctor in your telephone. So basically, for about $10 a month or $20 a visit, you can be connected directly with a board certified physician or RN or healthcare professional, depending on what situation you have. You tell them what's going on with your personal health. It is HIPAA certified. And then after a consultation with a doctor, they can write a prescription at any major pharmacy in America. And we do all of that without any health insurance requirement at all. And if you don't like the service, you can cancel at any time. And so I'm thrilled to be partnering with the CEO of the business, Tommy Duncan, who recently sold his company to Blue Cross Blue Shield in Washington, D.C. The international recording artist, Rick Ross, has been an amazing partner. And of course, Atlanta's own Dr. Jackie. So we've been having a lot of fun, signing up a lot of folks.
Why is something like this so important, especially as we look at the state of healthcare in our country and when we think about people who are underserved, particularly, again, people of color?
Absolutely. Well, prior to the pandemic, we were building out this business, but during the pandemic, the number of telehealth visits went past 1 billion because of what we were all experiencing during COVID. And as a result, people of color, especially Black people, missed a number of healthcare visits, checkups that keep a healthy lifestyle. And so what we want you to do is to have a doctor in your phone. More than 400 board certified physicians are a part of our network, and we plan to be expanding to Washington, D.C. soon. If you have access to a doctor that is easy, convenient, and low cost, you have a better chance of having a good health care outcome. And as Dr. Jackie says all of the time, as it relates to Black people and people of color, because we are dying more, we need to be doing more.
Wonderful. Now, while I do have you here, I want to ask you about a lot of other
Yes.
things that are going on in our country and our state. A lot of attention
Sure.
right now on crime in the city of Atlanta. So we know from Atlanta police that gun violence is up and arrests are down. You've served not only as mayor, but as a state legislator. So what do you see as the problem here? And what do you think is the best way to tackle this issue?
Well, my sense is that what we're facing is a lack of will. We have had crime spikes before, but last year 158 people were murdered. During my time in office, we only had more than 100 deaths in the city of Atlanta one time out of the 8 years. When I left, with crime was at 40-year lows. So we know it needs to be done. We built the biggest police force in the history of the city of Atlanta. We reached 2,000 officers at our peak levels. We had an enormous amount of direct engagement. Every single Center of Hope needs to be open till 7 p.m. Every single recreation center in the city of Atlanta needs to be open until 7 p.m. We need to have direct physical engagement of our elected leaders in the communities where you see crime spikes. So, for example, if you know an area is having real challenges, the physical presence along with the police presence and community presence of elected officials makes all of the difference in the world. This is a problem that is going to take some time to put down because we saw the signs of this coming along and we didn't do enough when we saw the early signs. So now we're in the midst of a storm that we're going to have to take direct action to push back against.
Kind of
The
along.
bottom line is this is not a COVID crisis. This is a crime crisis. There are cities like Houston, Las Vegas, Nevada, other cities that have had surges, but they haven't had 60% surges. So Washington, D.C., for example, is as diverse and big and bold and inclusive as Atlanta, it hasn't seen crime spikes like this. So the important thing right now, Jill, is to confront the reality of what's going on. So I'm not in the political fray. I'm not running for mayor, but I did do the job for 8 years, and I know that you can push back against crime. Atlanta's in a position that I've never seen in my life. I mean, you have metal detectors on Phipps, you have metal detectors on Lennox, you have the relationship between the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia is the worst that I have seen it in 2 decades. And all of the while, this week, you had members of our city who live in Buckhead raise $300,000 to separate from it. And so all I hope is that folks will recognize that we are at a moment of crisis. Atlanta is a big, beautiful, bold tapestry, but a tapestry has to be weaved together, and that weaving has to be maintained. And so my fear is that we're seeing all of these things happen right in front of us in slow motion. Everybody's talking about it at their dinner tables, and we're not raising the alert to a crisis level, which is what it is.
You mentioned Buckhead. That was going to be my next question for you. With people wanting to leave and go it on their own, what do you think of that? It is something that we're not seeing just in Atlanta, but we're seeing other counties in our state with communities saying we want to leave. What do you think about that, a city of Buckhead?
I'm against the idea because I think it sends a bad message locally and nationally. And folks who might say, well, Buckhead leaving is no big deal. If you're saying that, you don't care about the kids in the Atlanta public school system. So folks need to understand in real terms that Buckhead represents somewhere between 32 to 40% of all of the property tax revenues generated in the city of Atlanta, not to mention sales tax and all of the rest. And so if that amount of revenue, if your ratings went down 30% or 40%, you would be concerned. So if you have citizens who care enough to raise $300,000 in order to explore leaving, you need to get directly involved in finding out what precipitated the problem. This has gone further than it's ever gone before. So there's an actual bill in the Georgia legislature that is being moved to have Buckhead break off. And so in my mind, this constitutes a very serious emergency. And if you're one of those folks who say, oh, those rich people, just let them go, then you don't care about that poor black girl or black boy who goes to the Atlanta public school. Because if Buckhead leaves, the revenue for the Atlanta public school system leaves with them. And so my sense, Jill, is this needs to be talked about. You all need to be talking about it, because you could have this issue being debated out during a gubernatorial election. So if you can imagine having Buckhead city issues and a Buckhead bill in the Georgia General Assembly, while you have a competitive race with Governor Kemp and leader Stacey Abrams, then Atlanta could end up in a place that it has not been before. But for some reason, nobody is talking about these things, and we're just letting it run and run and run. The numbers are worse and worse and worse. And so what got me activated was that my mother goes to the Chick-fil-A at Colony Square, and she went to the Chick-fil-A on the day. She was not there when it got robbed, but she went to that Chick-fil-A on the day that it got robbed. And so it's personal to me. The grandmother of my daughter, when dropping off my daughter, was robbed. One of my dear friends was the victim of an attempted carjacking and couldn't get the police on the phone, even though she had the license plate for the person that tried to carjack her car. And what I believe is that most people in Atlanta are having these kinds of experiences. What I hear overwhelmingly from people who walk up to me is that they're afraid, particularly when they're women, to get gas in the city of Atlanta. So they're driving around on E. So everybody knows that this is the environment that we're in. And the reason that I'm talking about it, I was minding my own business. I was on the Frank Ski show and on a V show, and they asked me about it, and I just answered the question. Because being a citizen has no term limits on it. So I'm not leaving Atlanta. I'm raising my family in Atlanta, and I'm going to live the rest of my life in Atlanta. And I'm not going to sit by while 158 people get murdered, while the crime statistics are the worst that they have been in more than 30 years, and act like it's the result of COVID. It's not. And until we get serious about what is in front of us, the Atlanta that all of us have combined to build is being torn apart while we sit and watch.
Another issue that has a lot of folks concerned and a big spotlight on our state is the new election law. What do you think about that law and similar efforts that we're seeing all over the country?
I think that it's a national disgrace, and I think that the Democratic Party at the national level needs to move at once to pass the John Lewis bill. It cannot wait. And if Democrats play around and allow these draconian, racist election laws to pass, we're going to lose the House, the Senate, and we're going to lose the presidency. So folks that are acting like this can wait, they're wrong. It cannot wait. It is the most important issue. The right to be able to wake up in your community and go and cast your vote in an unfettered way without having to spend hours in lines. The ability in this bill to actually replace the judgment of the local officials is breathtaking in how brazen it is an effort at election suppression. And so I don't think that this is a fight that can wait to be fought. And I think that Democrats at the national level need to put everything on the line now that they have gotten the COVID relief bill through to protect the right for ordinary citizens to wake up and cast their vote.
Mayor, you are known for working well across the aisle with former Governor Nathan Deal. When you look at politics right now, not just in our state, but our country, our local governments, what do you think is going on? What do you think is missing, and how can we get back to a place where even crossing party lines for even a small compromise isn't such a bad thing?
I think that you have to be the example of it. So if you're in a position where you're elected by folks, despite how hard it is, you've got to stay at it. I'm very worried for my friends in the Republican Party because of the damage that I think that was caused to it by President Trump. But I also know that if we stay at it, continue to work at it, and win elections, that I think over time we'll begin to heal these wounds that I think have damaged the fabric of our local society and national society so gravely. But none of that can occur if we don't address the election suppression efforts that are occurring right now, because then there is no reason to have to make sure that you cooperate in a bipartisan way. Right now, it's too much winner take all.
Yeah. Mayor, last question for you. I know you mentioned earlier that you're not running for mayor, but given everything that's going on across the nation and on the state level, on various municipal levels, do you see yourself running for public office ever again, or do you think that chapter's closed? I've seen folks calling for you to do something.
I don't know. If they can get it by Maria Reed, then I'll think about it again. But right now, I'm enjoying my life, having fun doing what I'm doing, out here promoting jetdoc.com. And more, when I have an opinion, I'm going to feel free to share it. I still have a pretty big social media platform of about 500,000 people. So what I'm here today to say is that there's no term limit on being a citizen. And I love Atlanta with all my heart. And I'm not going to sit by and watch all of these things happen in slow motion without raising my voice, talking about it, sharing the experiences that we had when we faced challenges like before. We've had bigger protests than we dealt with before. We've had bigger issues related to crime than we're dealing with right now. We've had to build a police force before. We've had to make sure that our police officers handle themselves in a civil way. We eliminated Red Dog. We implemented the use of video cams. So all of these things we were acknowledged for by Barack Obama's administration as a part of the 21st century policing efforts. So you can be humane, you can have a terrific police force, and you can bring crime to 40-year lows in less than 180 days.